No. Motion carries. The bill is amended. Further discussion to the bill. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Will the sponsor yield to a question?
Will the sponsor yield?
I would be delighted.
Go ahead.
Are standards in place for officers to pursue suspects when they are fleeing? Standards that govern the conduct of the officer conducting the chase?
Yes. Protocols and standards and policies, yes.
And they're trained on when to pursue, under what circumstances to break off the pursuit, that type of thing?
Representative, I can't speak to every individual department's training, but the intent of that pursuit policy is, yes, they should be trained, and would be, obviously, one of the things I would be concerned about that they were being trained, yes.
Now, the language on line 82 talks about the fact that the operator, I'm looking at lines 80 through 82, the operator of an authorized emergency vehicle owes no duty of care to a person who is a suspect in the commission of a crime. That's in the officer's perception. Is that right, whether an individual is a suspect? I mean, the individual may or may not have committed a crime, but the officer thinks that he's chasing a suspect, correct?
In the state of mind of the officer at the particular time, if that person is indeed a suspect, then obviously it would be in the state of the mind of the officer making that or attempting to make that arrest.
You indicated in your comments that this does not immunize bad behavior on the part of a police officer, and I want to be the first to acknowledge that we've got tremendous law enforcement officials who do great work, but there are problems on occasion. What would your bill have? What effect would your bill have if a police officer has been drinking and is intoxicated when he's on the job and begins a chase? Is there immunity from injury that is caused by that sort of a police officer?
No, there is not, because you'd be outside of policy, and you can't legislate gross negligence.
Show me where in the bill you carve out that circumstance from being immune. I don't see it. Can you identify that for me?
Well, not in this particular case, because this particular case of the bill addressed such a narrow focus as the Supreme Court has asked us to. If we would like to address the entire bills that have to do with training and law enforcement and how they're trained and under what auspices they are under the color of law, then we could probably address that. In this particular bill, it does not address that particular issue because it is narrowed to the point where the Supreme Court says just carve out this instant. So
there's a reference on line 83 and at other places in the bill, line 80 has it too, to authorized emergency vehicle. Would that be an ambulance as well as a police officer or perhaps a fire truck?
That's correct.
Mr. Speaker, I'm troubled very much by this bill. I appreciate the sponsor's intent to take care of the safety officers that we have, our law enforcement officials. They work under tremendous difficulty. They're undercompensated, underappreciated by many of us. They do great work, remarkable work. But we know that when you remove standards of care, and this in fact does remove standards of care. Let's not have any illusions about this. If you look at lines 80 and then the remainder of the bill, it's very clear in saying the operator of an authorized emergency vehicle owes no duty of care to a suspect in the commission of a crime as adjudged by the officer himself or herself who is evading, fleeing, or otherwise attempting to elude the operator of an authorized emergency vehicle. And it extends that statement that there is no duty of care to individuals who are in the vehicle unless they're there involuntarily. Let me give you a scenario. My daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, has the misfortune of going out on a date with an individual who has a warrant out for his arrest. She has no idea. She gets in the car, he's driving the car, somebody, a police officer following them, puts his plates into his search engine and finds that there's an outstanding warrant on my daughter's date and turns his lights on. In an exercise of grossly poor judgment, he takes off, rolls the vehicle. My daughter's injured. My daughter's killed. My daughter and I have no remedy, none under this bill, even though she's completely ignorant of those circumstances. Now, I'm not saying that she should have a remedy if, in fact, the police officer has done everything he or she should do to carry out his pursuit of my daughter's date in a reasonable way. That's just sad, but I don't have the ability to go after the police department or the police officer in that circumstance, and I shouldn't.
We're fixing this.
What I should be able to do is look at the particular facts and circumstances of the situation and see if the standards of care that the bill sponsor acknowledges should be in place and are in place were violated. And if they were violated, I should have a remedy. And my daughter, if she's injured and has to live with those injuries, should have a remedy. It's not right to put in place an immunity to allow individuals to violate standards of care that are in place without consequence. We do this all the time up here with government. We immunize government agencies and individuals acting on behalf of government all the time. It's wrong. We talk about personal accountability, we talk about personal responsibility up here, and then we pass bills like this. It's not right. Think about this. Do we really want to be handling this kind of a situation with a sledgehammer, or do we want the courts to sort out on a case-by-case, fact-by-fact basis whether in a particular circumstance a particular person acting on behalf of the government acted in a proper way in accordance with standards of care or acted in a way that violates those standards of care? And if they violated the standard of care, whether the individual who's injured has a remedy. What I'm talking about here are classic principles of small government, conservative government. Let's keep, instead of putting a one-size-fits-all piece of legislation in place, a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito, let's not put in place a bill that immunizes an entire swath of law enforcement officials to the detriment of us, our children, our grandchildren, the people that we know and love in our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McKiff.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move an amendment